Hi, I'm Leland. A month ago, I thought I still had a marriage, a home, a life built on trust. But that morning, I got a call that split my world wide open. The property manager said my wife came in with a man who looked exactly like me, used my name to take our house. I said, "That's impossible. She's supposed to be at work." He replied, "Sir, that's not even the worst part." And he was right, because what she planned next almost erased me completely. How do you fight back when the person closest to you rewrites your life while smiling in your face? It started like any other late afternoon in early summer. I was still at my desk, trying to wrap up a stack of rental reports before heading home. The office building was quiet, the kind of quiet you only hear when everyone else has already given up on the day. I should have gone home an hour earlier, but I told myself I'd just finish one more file. That was always my problem. As the youngest son, I learned to stay late, pick up what others left behind, and never make a fuss. It became a habit that followed me well into adulthood. I closed a folder and reached for my drawer to put things away. Sitting in the back corner was an old brass key. My mother's handwriting was still faint on the tag, though time had rubbed most of it off. It belonged to her childhood home, the same property I had inherited after she passed. I hadn't touched that key in months, but for some reason I picked it up and slipped it into my pocket. I didn't think much of the gesture, but it made something settle in my chest, like an unfinished thought I had been avoiding. I logged off my computer and pushed back my chair, ready to call it a day. Right as I reached for my jacket, my phone started buzzing. A number I didn't recognize flashed across the screen. Normally, I let unknown calls go to voicemail, but something nudged me to answer. "Hello, this is Leland." "Sir, this is Russell Crane. I manage the property on Hawthorne." His voice cracked on the last word. I paused, trying to place him. "Russell, is everything all right?" "Not exactly." He took a breath, the kind people take when they're about to deliver bad news. "I need to tell you something, but I'm not sure how to say it." My stomach tightened. "Go ahead." "Yesterday, your wife came here with a man who looks just like you. She used your name to claim the house, and she asked the staff not to tell you." For a moment, all I did was blink. I actually looked around the office, half expecting someone to jump out and say it was a joke. "That doesn't make sense," I muttered. "Marlene told me she was at work all day yesterday." "I know what she said, sir, but the man with her, he introduced himself as you. Same height, same build. Close enough that my team believed him until I double-checked the ID." I let out a thin laugh I didn't feel. "Russell, there has to be some kind of mix-up." "I wish it was," he whispered. "There's something else, though, and I can't explain it over the phone." My pulse kicked up. "Are you telling me they signed paperwork under my name?" Silence stretched for a few seconds. "Please come here," he finally said. "Right now. It's important." The seriousness in his tone chilled me more than the words. Russell had always been steady, almost rigid in how he handled things. Hearing him tremble was enough to make my nerves stir. I stepped into the hallway to get some air. "All right, I'm leaving now." He didn't say goodbye. He just hung up. As I walked back to my office to grab my things, stray moments from the past few months came crawling back. Marlene working later and later, her putting her phone face down every time I walked into the room, charges on our joint account from places she never mentioned. Every time I asked, she brushed me off with a quick, "Don't start, Leland. I'm tired." She said it so often it became a wall I didn't try to climb anymore. Maybe I should have tried. I reached for my keys, hand trembling only slightly. There was a weight pressing behind my ribs, heavy and cold. Being the youngest meant you avoided conflict. You waited things out. You looked for the easiest path. And maybe that's how I ended up here, on the edge of something I could already tell was going to hurt. I made my way out of the building, taking the stairs instead of the elevator because I needed a minute to clear my mind. The air hit warmer outside, the kind of sticky heat Houston holds on to even at the end of the day. I walked across the parking lot and unlocked my truck. Once inside, I tried calling Marlene. The line rang until voicemail picked up. I tried again. Same thing. Something inside me sank. Not completely, but enough for me to recognize that this wasn't going to be a simple misunderstanding. There was a shift happening, quiet but sharp, and I could feel it settling between us like a curtain dropping. I started the engine, gripping the wheel a little too tightly. "Whatever this is," I murmured under my breath, "I won't let it catch me off guard." I backed out of the parking spot and headed toward the freeway. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in a dull orange. I tried to focus on the road, but my thoughts kept circling that one sentence: "A man who looks exactly like you." As I turned onto the on-ramp, my phone lit up with a text from Russell. It said, "Sir, I didn't tell you everything on the call." I didn't respond right away, just tightened my grip on the wheel and stared at the glowing text, watching the words blur slightly before refocusing. The freeway lights passed in quick streaks across my windshield, but my thoughts were slower than ever. Whatever Russell hadn't said over the phone, I already knew it wasn't good. 15 minutes later, I pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of the real estate office. The sun had just dropped below the horizon, and Houston's muggy heat clung to everything like a second skin. Most of the office windows were dark except for one in the corner, Russell's. It flickered with that cold white-blue glow that never quite felt human. I parked near the front entrance and sat for a second, engine still running. My fingers drummed the steering wheel, the same rhythm over and over. I killed the engine, stepped out, and walked up to the glass door. The place looked abandoned except for him, pacing like a man rehearsing bad news. Russell didn't bother with greetings. As soon as he saw me through the door, he unlocked it and pulled me inside with a hurried motion. "We need to talk where no one can hear us," he said, voice clipped. He led me through the side hallway to a small conference room. As soon as we stepped in, he shut the door and twisted the lock behind us. The air in the room felt tight. I sat down slowly, scanning his face. "All right, what didn't you tell me?" Russell didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a visitor log sheet from a file folder and slid it across the table toward me. "Start here," he said. My eyes landed on Marlene's name, written neatly in her cursive, still familiar after all these years. She had signed in as Marlene Moray. Nothing odd about that. But my stomach turned when I read the next line. Guest, Leland Moray. It wasn't my handwriting, not even close. "She signed in for both of you?" I asked. He nodded. "That's standard if the guest doesn't write their own name. But the guy with her didn't object. He acted like it was his name." I stared at the paper. Then Russell pushed a black tablet toward me. "You need to see this." I picked it up. The video feed loaded automatically. Footage from the front entrance, time-stamped for the day before. The second it started, I saw her. Marlene walked in like she owned the place. Confident, smiling, hair done up like she was going to brunch instead of forging signatures. But it was the man next to her that made my heart stutter. Same height, same build, Same style of navy jacket I'd worn dozens of times. He kept his chin down, barely spoke, just nodded at the front desk. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but I could tell. His posture wasn't mine. His energy was off. Russell leaned forward. She introduced him as you. Insisted, actually. I didn't take my eyes off the screen. That's not me. No, he said quietly. It's not. I watched a few seconds longer. Marlene touched the man's arm with easy familiarity. They walked down the hallway together like it wasn't their first time. The video paused. I set the tablet down, hands shaking just slightly. Russell sat across from me, his face tight with discomfort. A few staff members felt something was off. One even told me later. It just didn't feel like him. But Marlene, she was in control. She told them to process everything fast. Said she was fixing some mistake you made. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to stay grounded. She told the front desk not to call me? I asked. Not just that, Russell replied. One of the assistants said she told them, don't bother calling my husband. He's forgetful. I take care of everything. Those words, they hit harder than any punch. That's what she thought of me. Or worse, that's what she wanted everyone else to believe. I sat there, silently watching my trust unravel like cheap thread. She's been laying this out for months, I muttered. The late nights, the way she always said she'd take care of the paperwork, the accounts she didn't want me checking. Russell didn't speak. He didn't have to. The pieces were fitting together on their own. I looked back down at the log sheet. The fake name, the calm confidence in the video, the lie spoken like routine. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment trick, I said. She's been planting this story, that I'm scatterbrained, disorganized, so no one would question her. Russell nodded slowly. It worked. For a while. I stood up and paced to the window. The parking lot outside was now completely empty. One lonely security light buzzed near the sidewalk. When someone shows you who they are, I said, barely above a whisper, believe them. Russell shifted in his seat, cleared his throat. There's more. I turned back, heart already bracing. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice like someone afraid the walls might hear. Your wife didn't just claim the house. She told us you gave her full control, that you agreed to sign everything over. She requested a duplicate deed with only her name on it. That stopped me cold. My knees actually went weak, and I sat down again before I realized I had. She tried to erase me, I said. Russell looked down, not knowing how to respond. After a long moment, I asked, do you have copies of what they submitted? He nodded, got up, and returned with a thin folder. He handed it to me carefully, like he was offering a loaded weapon. I opened it, scanning the documents. Some forms had my name typed in, but none of them had my actual signature. Still, the handwriting was close enough to raise questions if you didn't know what to look for. Whoever forged this, I said, knew what they were doing. I looked up. Did she leave anything behind? Notes? Copies? No, but, he hesitated. We did find a file number connected to an earlier visit, a few weeks ago. We didn't think anything of it at the time. She said she was updating her information. My mind raced. She's been preparing this. Russell sat back. She wasn't alone in it either. That man, whoever he is, she trusts him. Maybe family. Maybe more. I didn't respond, because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a campaign. I had just reached for the file when Russell's hand shot out, firm but not aggressive. "There's something else you need to know before you open that," he said quietly. I let my hand hover over the folder a second longer, then pulled it back. My chair creaked as I settled into it again, suddenly aware of how tense my shoulders were. Russell stayed standing, fingers twitching slightly like he wasn't sure whether to pace or sit. "It's about the man who pretended to be you," he began, his voice low. I didn't interrupt. I just looked at him, steady. "He wasn't just someone she found off the street," he said. "He moved like someone who's used to talking his way through trouble, comfortable, like he'd done this kind of thing before. And your wife, she didn't even flinch, treated him like she knew exactly how he'd act." My stomach turned. That meant planning. Not just deceit, but confidence. Practice. Russell added, "She kept giving him little cues, like small nods, reassurances. I didn't notice it at first, but when I went back and watched the footage again, it was all there, like they'd rehearsed it." A sharp pressure pushed at my chest. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the blank wall behind him, trying to center myself. The strange thing? It wasn't even the impersonator that got to me. It was that I hadn't seen any of this coming. Or maybe I had, and I'd looked away. A memory tugged at the edge of my mind, dragging me back 2 years to a family barbecue. That was the last time all 3 of us brothers had been in the same place. I remembered standing near the grill, holding a paper plate, listening to my older brother Clayton crack jokes with a group of cousins. I wasn't really part of the conversation, just orbiting. Clayton threw his arm around my shoulder and laughed. "You know, Leland's the kind of guy you could replace with a cardboard cutout, and no one would even notice." They all laughed. I forced a smile. Even my other brother, James, smirked and said, "He's not wrong." Marlene had leaned in later that night as we got in the car and whispered, "Don't take it personal. They're right, though. You blend in too much." At the time, I told myself she was teasing, but now, it hit differently. Back in the office, I rubbed my palms together under the table. That ache in my chest was back, deeper this time. Not just from the betrayal, but from realizing how long I'd been slowly erased, piece by piece. Russell sat again, quieter now, letting the silence stretch. "I don't know how she convinced him to go along with it," he said, "but she seemed certain he'd play the role right." I took a slow breath and replied, "She knew exactly what kind of man to pick. Someone confident, someone loud, someone not me." That thought sat heavy. Being the youngest of 3 had always meant being the one to carry everyone else's mess. I was the fixer, the peacekeeper. I learned early that if I didn't push back, if I stayed agreeable, things stayed calm. And when things were calm, people left me alone. That habit followed me into every part of my life: school, work, and then marriage. Marlene loved that about me. At least she did at first. She'd say I was low maintenance, that I didn't bring drama. But over the years, I noticed something shift. She started handling everything herself: bills, paperwork, even birthday plans. At first, I thought she was just efficient. Then it started feeling like she didn't trust me to do it right. But instead of asking questions, I stepped aside. And she took full advantage. I didn't say any of this out loud. I didn't need to. Russell could read it on my face. He cleared his throat again, more hesitant this time. "There's something else," he said. "She was here once before, 3 months ago." I blinked. "What?" "She came alone, asked questions about the deed, Wanted clarification on how ownership works, if changes could be made without your presence. My hands tightened around the chair arms. 3 months ago? He nodded. She said she was visiting her sister in Dallas that week. There it was. Another lie, hiding in plain sight. She's been laying this out a long time, I said, more to myself than to him. I tried to trace it back. How long had she been building this foundation? 6 months? A year? And then I remembered another night. 6 months ago, I'd asked Marlene about money that went missing from our joint savings account. Just a few $100s, but I had a spreadsheet, and it didn't add up. Instead of answering, she cried. She said I didn't appreciate how hard she worked to manage our future, that I didn't trust her, that I always doubted her intentions. And I, like a fool, apologized. I remember holding her hand and saying I was sorry for accusing her, that I'd been stressed and overthinking things. I remember thinking I was the one in the wrong. But now, I realized that night was the turning point. That was when she stopped pretending. That's when she knew I wouldn't push back, because she'd trained me not to. My eyes drifted back to the folder. Betrayal didn't come in one blow. It came in slow, quiet layers. It came in overlooked details, in deflected questions, in silence. She didn't just lie to me, I said finally, voice steady. She built a world where my voice didn't matter. Russell didn't reply. I stood up, slowly, like something inside me had shifted and couldn't be put back. Give me copies of everything, I said. Every doc, every login, every second of that footage. He nodded and reached into a drawer, pulling out a small flash drive. It's all here. I took it gently, the weight of it somehow heavier than its size. He looked up. You're going to do something with this? Oh, I'm going to do a lot with this. I turned toward the door, walked a few steps, but then Russell's voice came again, low, cautious. There's one more detail you need to see. It's about what she said after you left the office yesterday. I froze in the doorway. I didn't turn around. I just stood there, staring at the exit, as Russell's words hit me square in the chest. She told us you approved the transfer because you don't care about that house anymore. It was like someone had opened a trapdoor under my feet. For a few seconds, I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood frozen in place, jaw clenched, hands curled tight. I did care. That house wasn't just a house. It was the last thread connecting me to a version of my life before everything became performance. Before I started acting fine, even when I wasn't. My parents didn't leave me money or land or a business. They left me that house, and a key I used to run my fingers over like it still had warmth from my mother's hand. Russell's voice softened behind me. Leland, I'm sorry. I didn't know how much it meant to you. We just assumed. You didn't do this, I said, cutting him off without anger. She did. I finally turned around and walked back toward the small office, legs stiff. I sat down again, more heavily this time. Repeat exactly what she said. I want to hear it, word for word. Russell opened a file on his desk and scrolled down slowly, almost like he didn't want to find the line. She said, My husband isn't attached to the place. He only keeps it for paperwork. He said, I can handle everything. I stared at him for a long second. Then I repeated, almost under my breath, she used my silence as permission, because I had never told her otherwise. I'd never raised my voice. I'd never fought back. And in her eyes, that meant she had room to rewrite the story. Russell hesitated again. There's more. Go on. She told a staff member in passing, "He's sentimental, but he'll get over it. He always does." I closed my eyes. That cut deeper than I expected. Not because it was cruel, but because it was accurate. I had been the kind of man who let things go, who didn't hold grudges, who apologized even when I wasn't wrong just to keep things easy. She knew that. She counted on it. I stood up again, slower this time. The walls of that little office felt too tight, the air stale. I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall, letting my head rest back for a moment. "You don't realize how fragile trust is," I whispered to myself, "until you watch someone else use your gentleness as a tool." I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, elbows on my knees, staring ahead. "She'll get over it." That phrase looped in my mind like a bad chorus. I don't know how long I sat there before I pulled my phone out of my pocket and stared at the screen. I tapped her name. It rang once. Then again. Finally, she picked up. Her voice was steady, almost bored. "Hey, can I call you back? I'm staying late at work." I didn't respond right away. Then, "Where are you?" "I told you. I'm at the office. We had a last-minute audit." I let her words hang in the air before speaking. "I'm going to ask you one question. Just answer it honestly." Silence. She shifted, slightly irritated. "Leland, if this is about money again, I told you..." "Were you at the property office yesterday?" Dead silence. She waited half a beat too long. Then her voice came back, slow and measured. "No." "Why? Did someone say I was?" There it was. I didn't say another word. I ended the call. The line went dead. Her lie was smooth, practiced. She didn't stammer, didn't scramble. She'd had that answer loaded for weeks, maybe longer. I walked outside into the parking lot. The night air wasn't cool, but it hit me like cold water. My phone buzzed again, this time a message. It was from Tony, the neighbor next to the old property. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. "Hey man, don't mean to stir anything, but saw someone yesterday who looked like your wife. She was with a guy that looked a lot like you, but something about him felt off. Thought you should know." I stared at the message, rereading it until the words started to blur. So it wasn't just paperwork. They'd gone there together, physically, as a pair, in public, bold enough to risk being seen, confident no one would question it. I was still staring at the screen when I heard the door open behind me. Russell stepped out, holding a sheet of paper. "Almost forgot," he said. "This just got logged. It's a list of items moved to the storage drawer last week. You might want to look." I took it, skimming quickly. One line froze me. "Old wooden box from Moray family belongings, temporarily moved to secure drawer." My breath caught. I looked up. "Who moved it?" "Your wife. She said you'd given her permission to reorganize some of the older, sentimental items. That box, that wasn't just storage. It held birthday cards, my mother's old recipes, the key to the house. Even a letter she wrote me when I graduated high school, back when she still thought I'd do something big with my life." I didn't speak. I didn't have to. Russell's eyes met mine. "Leland, there's something else she moved. Something you're not going to like. She asked us to prepare a new access list," Russell said, voice dropping low. "And the first name she removed was yours." I didn't respond. The parking lot around me had gone still. No passing cars, no streetlight flicker. Just this breathless quiet, like the moment before a storm cracks wide open. "She removed me?" I repeated the words under my breath. like I was trying to convince myself I'd heard them right, like maybe they'd sound different out loud. Russell's expression twisted, caught between guilt and pity. "I'm sorry, Leland. Honestly, I thought something was off." But she was so certain. She brought paperwork, claimed she was finalizing your request. We didn't know what to think. But I did. I knew now. She hadn't just pushed me aside. She'd written me out of my own story. I nodded slowly. "Thanks, Russell." He stayed silent, like he wanted to say something else, but knew better. I walked away before he could finish his look. The drive back felt longer than usual, even though the traffic had thinned and the lights stayed green. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't touch the air conditioning. Just gripped the wheel and stared straight ahead like I was trying to hold myself together through sheer focus. It wasn't anger yet. That came later. It was something heavier, the kind of hurt that makes you forget how to breathe. Somewhere along the road, just past the third exit, I heard my mother's voice in my head, faint, but clear enough to slice through the noise. She used to say it when I helped her sweep that porch in the summer heat. "One day, this place will be yours. You're the one who cares." And I had cared. That house was never about the value. It was about the echo in the walls, the memory of her soap, the dent in the banister my brother made with his skateboard in '93. I remembered it all. Now it was being signed away like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. The ache rose until I couldn't see the road. I pulled over just before a blinking gas station sign and sat with my head on the steering wheel, eyes burning, not from the light, from everything. After a while, I wiped my face with the sleeve of my shirt and sat back, blinking hard. Then I did what I didn't want to do. I called Marlene. No answer. I tried again. Same result. I left a message. "I need to talk to you. Now." Waited 2 minutes. Called again. Still nothing. I looked at the screen. The silence between us wasn't peace anymore. It was strategy. Her silence was a wall she had built, and I'd helped build it by never questioning it. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was nearly 10. The lights were off inside. Her car wasn't in the garage. Still at work, I guessed. I stepped inside and instantly felt it. The air had changed. Thicker somehow, like the walls knew something I didn't. I dropped my keys on the entry table and noticed the mail had been sorted into neat piles. Something I usually did. The framed photo of us from that cruise back in 2015 sat askew, like someone had picked it up and put it down in a hurry. Her purse wasn't on the hook, and the drawer with the checkbook wasn't fully closed. They were little things, but together they screamed. I sat on the couch, letting my body sink deep into the cushions like they could hold the weight I was carrying. I reached for the folder Russell had handed me before I left and flipped it open. Right there, item U11. Old wooden box. Moved to secure drawer under spouse authorization. I stared at that line until the words blurred. It wasn't about the box. It was what was inside it. My mother's handwritten cards, her holiday letters, the note she left taped to the kitchen counter the day she left for the hospital, the keys to the old house, her wedding ring she made me promise to hold until I found someone who'd treat me right. Marlene had opened it, touched it, moved it like it was just storage. She hadn't just taken property. She had taken history. I leaned back into the couch, numb, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan as it spun slowly above me. I didn't know how long I sat there. 15 minutes, maybe 30. Time had lost its edges. "There's a moment in every betrayal," I said aloud, voice thin, "where the heart just gives out. And somewhere between the stillness and the dark, I said it out loud for the first time. She never loved me the way I loved her. It echoed in the room like I'd broken something. Maybe I had. My phone buzzed. I blinked and looked down, expecting another message from work or a spam alert, but it wasn't either. Unknown number. Text. If you want the truth about your wife, you need to check the security footage from last Friday evening. She wasn't alone. I stared at it, pulse spiking. The message continued a second later, and it wasn't the man from yesterday. I sat upright, hands trembling, eyes burning again, but this time, not from grief, from clarity. It came right after the last text. As my hands trembled over the phone, another message lit up the screen. You're not the only one she lied to. I stared at it. The room, the walls, the silence. They all faded. Just me, the screen, and that one line staring back like it had teeth. Then came the next. She's been planning this a lot longer than you think. I didn't know who this person was or what they wanted from me, but I knew one thing. They weren't lying. The truth wasn't creeping anymore. It was sprinting toward me like a freight train I should have heard coming months ago. I tapped the number. No name, no photo, no records. Blocked ID, burner phone, deliberate. Another message buzzed in. Check the Friday footage now. You'll understand. I didn't ask which Friday. I already knew. The one where she told me she was stuck late at work, then came home smelling like someone else's cologne and smiled like nothing was wrong. I reached for the laptop Russell had let me access earlier, entered the credentials, logged into the property's system. The page loaded painfully slow, spinning, buffering, mocking my patience. I found the timestamp, last Friday, around 6:15 p.m., and hit play. The black and white footage kicked in. It showed the front of the old house, a staff member locking up, a few maintenance workers walking out. Then a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Marlene stepped out, composed, calm, like she owned the world. But she wasn't alone. A man got out from the passenger side, not the impersonator from the other day. This one was younger, slimmer, sharp suit, smooth movements. He looked around casually, as if this was routine. They walked in together. Marlene held a folder. I blinked. It was my folder. The same one I kept in the bottom drawer of my home office. I remembered slipping in the title deed, thinking I'd revisit the legal documents later. Guess she revisited them first. I felt something hot rising up from my gut. I turned the volume up. The office had directional microphones, Russell had said. I scrubbed the timeline forward a few minutes until the two of them were alone in the lobby. And then I heard her voice, clear as daylight, soft and sure. He's too soft to fight back. He never does. The man chuckled. So he won't question the paperwork? He never questions anything. She laughed, gentle, rehearsed, cold. I sat frozen. The blood in my chest thumped like someone knocking on a locked door from the inside. She said it like it was a fact, like my silence was her permission slip. Then the man asked, "What if he finds out?" She didn't miss a beat. He won't. He trusts me too much. And by the time he realizes, it'll be done. There it was. Everything I'd built my marriage on. Trust, patience, second chances, turned into her weapon. I paused the video. My reflection stared back from the dark laptop screen. I looked older, like 10 years had passed. Between the start of the video and now, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Now you see why she brought a look-alike yesterday. This is bigger than an affair. It's about control. I swallowed hard and texted back, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. Someone who was hurt by her too. I didn't know if I believed them, but I believed the footage. I believed what I heard, what I saw. The thing inside me that had been breaking quietly for days, weeks, maybe years, finally stopped cracking. It hardened. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the door. Pain slows you down. Betrayal makes you overthink. But humiliation? Humiliation makes you move. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway. The night had thickened, a humid blanket over the city. I didn't turn on the music. I didn't need noise. I had her voice stuck in my head on a loop. He never questions anything. Streetlights blurred past. My hand stayed firm on the wheel. Every mile I drove was a vow. This doesn't end in silence. Not this time. I reached the old house just after 11. The driveway was empty. The porch lights were off. Everything looked normal, but something felt off. I got out, walked slowly around the side yard. My eyes scanned the windows one by one. Then I saw it. One of the latches, north side window near the kitchen, wasn't aligned. I leaned in closer, pulled out my phone, and turned on the flashlight. The metal showed fresh scratches right at the lock. Someone had been here. Recently. Someone who didn't use a key. I took a photo, zoomed in, documenting everything. My mind was spinning, calculating. And just as I leaned closer to inspect it again, a voice behind me said, "You shouldn't be here alone." I turned slowly. The porch light buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to cast a faint circle on the grass. A man stepped forward, cautious, both hands raised halfway like he was approaching a spooked animal. "Leland?" he asked, his voice low but steady. I didn't answer right away. He was about 10 years younger than me, maybe mid-30s, lean build, face drawn like someone who hadn't slept well in a while. His eyes, though, they carried the kind of weight I'd seen in my own mirror the past week. "I'm Caleb," he said. "I'm the one who's been messaging you." I still didn't drop my guard. "And you're just out here in the dark. Why?" He glanced around, then took another slow step closer. "Because I knew she'd be here tonight. She told me that once. Said she had to clean up loose ends. That's how she talks when she's about to burn something down." I kept the flashlight trained near his feet. "You worked with her?" "No," he said quickly. "Not directly. I dated someone who did. Back when Marlene worked at a different law office, small firm near Midtown. That's where she started doing things under the radar." He gave a humorless laugh. "Your wife knows how to work a system. People think she's charming, organized. But what she really is? Strategic. Every move she makes, every smile, every lie, it's part of a longer game." I let that settle in. Something about the way he spoke, careful, quiet, bruised. It didn't feel rehearsed. It felt lived. "She uses trust like currency," Caleb said, "and she spends it fast." I finally lowered the flashlight. "Why help me?" He exhaled through his nose. "Because I didn't speak up when I should have. Because I watched someone I care about lose everything because of Marlene's games. And I told myself it wasn't my problem. Until now. Until I saw her walk into that property office like she owned your name. I looked back toward the window we'd been examining. The night air felt thicker. My breath came slower now, not from fear, but from something colder, a clarity that only comes when you finally stop making excuses. "This wasn't a bad week," I muttered. "This was months, maybe longer." Caleb nodded. "She's been laying bricks, one by one. And yesterday? That wasn't the start. That was her final coat of paint." I stared at the old house, the chipped wood siding, the creaky porch, the echoes of every memory I'd locked away inside those walls, and now someone else, walking through them like they meant nothing. I turned back to Caleb. Tell me everything you know. Names, dates, what she accessed. His eyes widened a little, surprised at my tone. You're not just reacting anymore. No, I said quietly. I've been doing that too long. I'm done chasing. It's time I make her answer. For a beat, the only sound was the crickets in the grass. Then Caleb nodded. Good. Someone finally sees what she's capable of. Before we could say anything more, a sound, soft, muffled, came from inside the house. Both our heads snapped toward the window. A rustle, something brushing against wood. A slow drag. Caleb whispered, "She told me she'd come here tonight to finish something." I felt it too. That instinct in the gut you can't shake. We moved quietly around the side, stepping over fallen branches and damp grass. The window we'd checked earlier, ajar before, was now pushed slightly wider. "That wasn't like that 5 minutes ago," Caleb murmured. Inside, another sound, this time clearer. A thump, like a drawer being yanked open. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. Marlene. "Where are you? Don't do something stupid." Another came almost instantly. "If you dig around, you'll only embarrass yourself." Then a third. "Leave the house alone. You don't need to see what's in there." I felt my skin go cold. The timing was too exact. "She knows," I said under my breath. "She knows I'm here." Caleb's jaw clenched. "Then she's watching. Or someone told her." He looked toward the house, then back at me. "There's one more thing I didn't tell you. I think she's planning to remove the last set of files tonight, the ones that prove the house was never legally transferred." I blinked. "Wait, you're sure?" "She mentioned it once. Something about cleaning the paper trail. I didn't understand it at the time. But now?" We both looked toward the window, the faint outline of the office room visible through the glass. "She's in there," I said. "She's inside right now, getting rid of the one thing that can prove all of this is a lie." Caleb turned to me, his voice sharp and urgent. "If we wait too long, those papers are gone." I nodded once, slowly. "Then we're going in." I stepped toward the window, the wood creaking under my feet. And just as my fingers touched the edge of the glass to push it open, a loud crash echoed from inside the house. I ducked, instinct taking over before thought could catch up. A voice, sharp, unmistakable, cut through the thick air. "Leland." I hadn't heard her yell like that since the early years of our marriage, when there was still heat behind her words instead of calculation. But this wasn't the voice of someone trying to connect. This was the sound of someone cornered. Caleb crouched beside me, his eyes flicking toward the window. That came from the hallway. We climbed in fast. The living room was dark, lit only by the ambient glow from a dusty floor lamp someone had left on. The air inside was stale, tinged with the scent of old wood and something sharp, like sweat and panic. Boxes were stacked everywhere, some open, others half-taped. Folders, a laptop on the dining table still humming. Footsteps. I stepped forward cautiously, heart knocking against my ribs. Then I saw her. Marlene stood in the middle of the hallway. She wore a black jacket, the kind she used to throw on before Sunday grocery runs, but tonight it looked like armor. In her hands was a thick manila folder, overstuffed and creased like she'd clutched it too hard. Her eyes darted between me and Caleb. "You brought him here?" she barked. I didn't blink. "He brought himself." Her expression shifted. The fury stayed, but behind it, fear. I could see it in the way her fingers tightened around that folder like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. She stepped forward and slammed the folder down on the small hallway table. Papers scattered. Notarizations, transfer forms, copies of deeds. My name on every single one. Take a good look, she said flatly, because no one is going to believe you over paperwork. I reached for the top sheet. My signature stared back at me, perfectly replicated. The loops, the tilt, even the faint pressure mark near the D, but I hadn't signed a single one of them. You forged everything, I murmured. She crossed her arms. You think truth matters when all the lines have already been drawn? Caleb stepped out from behind me, voice steady but laced with anger. I told him what you did to Lisa, what you've done to others. You built your life on deception. Marlene's jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. You, she hissed. You ruined everything once, and now you're back to finish it? Caleb didn't move. I could see the tremble in his shoulders, but he stood his ground. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. I just looked at her, watched the way she scanned the room, the way she kept glancing over her shoulder like someone afraid of being caught mid-heist. She wasn't in control anymore. She was reacting. I stepped forward and opened the drawer beside the table. Inside, more papers, receipts, 2 burner phones, and another folder. I opened it. Inside were property listings in Austin, San Antonio, even Baton Rouge. Bank statements from accounts I never opened. Step-by-step instructions to wire money from joint assets. Assets I didn't even know she had accessed to a foreign brokerage firm. My hands stopped moving. This wasn't just about the house, I said quietly. You were going to clean me out. Her face flickered, just for a second, with something that looked like regret, but it didn't last. You never paid attention, she snapped. You never cared what I needed. So I built something without you. No, I said, still holding the folder. You built something against me. She lunged. Her fingers reached for the folder, her voice cracking. You weren't supposed to see that. I stepped back, my hand tightening around the edges. Caleb moved between us as she stumbled forward. You don't get to control this anymore, I told her, voice low. Not this time. From behind us came a shuffle. We both turned. A man, late 20s, maybe early 30s, emerged from the hallway, eyes wide, backpack slung over one shoulder. He saw us, froze, then turned to bolt. Hey! Caleb lunged, grabbing the man's jacket as he tried to dash past. A struggle. In the scuffle, the man dropped something. A small black USB drive clattered to the floor and slid toward me. Marlene screamed, "Don't touch that!" I picked it up, and that's when everything changed. Back at the dining table, I plugged the USB into the laptop. The screen flickered. Then folders appeared, dozens of them. Screenshots of emails, chat logs, scanned IDs, audio recordings. One email, subject line, "Final phase," caught my eye. It was a conversation between Marlene and the man now pinned under Caleb's knee. Plans to move money, forge documents, and ultimately vanish overseas. The plan included more than just property. There were mentions of insurance policies, retirement funds, even fabricated statements tied to my name and social security number. She wasn't just stealing. She was erasing me. Caleb looked stunned. She was going to disappear with him. I stared at the screen, then at her. She was breathing hard now, hair falling into her eyes, mascara smeared just enough to reveal the panic behind the anger. You didn't just betray our marriage, I said softly. You tried to erase me. She looked right at me, fire still burning, and said through clenched teeth, You erased yourself long before I did. I don't know why that hit the way it did. Maybe because a part of me believed it once, not anymore. She turned suddenly, snatching the original forged documents from the floor, and bolted toward the back hallway. Caleb! I shouted. We both took off after her. The hallway felt like it stretched longer with every step, shadows flickering, adrenaline pounding in my ears. She reached the back door first, yanked it open. Then she froze. I came up right behind her. Red and blue lights pulsed across her face, washing over her like waves of truth. Outside, in the UO driveway, a black and white cruiser waited. Another pulled up behind it. She turned slowly, and for the first time since this all began, Marlene looked genuinely afraid, and when I stepped outside behind her, I saw exactly who those flashing lights belonged to. Ray Delgado. I hadn't seen him in almost 5 years. Back then, it was over something small. Marlene had locked herself out and neighbors thought it was a break-in. Ray was calm, fair, patient. He hadn't changed much, still with that same stern expression softened slightly by tired eyes. He stood beneath the glow of the cruiser's bar lights, arms folded, watching us. As soon as his eyes met mine, I felt something in my chest loosen. Maybe it was relief. Or maybe I was just finally out of breath from running in circles. We got a call, he said, stepping forward. Suspicious activity, possible trespass and break-in, registered to this address. I called, Caleb said behind me, voice steady. I nodded, lifting the folder I still had clutched in my hand. There's more. Inside the house, forged documents, a stolen USB. Someone's been using my name to commit fraud. Marlene stepped forward, her voice strained but polished. It's a misunderstanding. This is my husband, or was. We're just sorting out some things between us. Delgado didn't blink. Ma'am, I'll ask you to step aside. Let him finish. She froze, just long enough for me to notice the way her confidence cracked. Caleb handed over the USB drive while I explained everything, from the hidden documents to the emails, the altered signatures, even the attempted escape. Delgado listened, his eyes narrowing with every word. He turned toward Marlene, expression flat. You're going to need to come with us. Her mouth dropped open. You're arresting me. You're being detained while we investigate fraud and attempted theft. Cooperate, and this stays procedural. She looked at me, desperate now. Leland, I didn't say a word. Another officer handcuffed the man who had been working with her. Caleb stepped forward again, gave his full name and statement. Delgado jotted everything down while officers began collecting physical evidence inside. Delgado turned back to me. Do you want to press charges? My mouth went dry. I didn't answer right away. I saw Marlene again. Not the woman in cuffs, but the woman from a decade ago on our wedding day, grinning through her veil like life was just beginning. Then I blinked and she was gone. Yes, I said. I do. Her voice cracked as she tried once more. Leland, please, don't do this. We can still fix it. Fix what? I asked. The damage or the deception? She stepped forward slightly, hands cuffed behind her, trembling now. You weren't supposed to fight me. You never did before. And there it was. That truth I hadn't let myself say aloud. She didn't just rely on my love. She depended on my silence. That was my mistake, I said quietly. Not anymore. She didn't speak again. The officers finished collecting what they needed. I signed the paperwork, turning over the evidence, every folder, the USB, the email printouts. Delgado gave me a firm nod, almost a gesture of respect. "You did the right thing," he said. "This would have ruined you." I nodded, but inside I felt nothing triumphant, just a dull, hollow ache. It was past midnight when I got back to my apartment. The place was quiet. Too quiet. I dropped my keys on the entry table and stood there for a second, staring into the stillness. My couch, my old bookshelf, a chipped coffee mug I never bothered to replace. "You don't celebrate when a storm ends," I whispered to myself. "You listen to the damage." I sat down on the edge of the couch and just breathed. There was nothing dramatic about it, just the weight of exhaustion and a silence that no longer felt like punishment. The tension I'd carried in my shoulders for months, maybe years, was still there, but it had shifted. No longer holding me down, just reminding me where I'd been. I pulled open the drawer of the side table and took out a folded business card. The property manager's name was still printed in faded ink. He'd handed it to me the day Marlene and I first walked through that Houston house together. Back then, it felt like a ticket to a life we were going to build. Now it felt like the receipt of what I'd almost lost. "You taught me what happens when you trust the wrong foundation," I said aloud, not to anyone in particular. A few hours later, after I managed some sleep, I made the call I'd been avoiding for too long. An attorney named Helen picked up after 2 rings. Her voice was calm, clipped, experienced. "Based on what you've described," she said after I finished, "this will work heavily in your favor. I'll start drafting the initial divorce paperwork today." I felt a knot unwind in my chest. "I don't want revenge," I told her. "I just want my life back." She understood. We agreed to meet later that week. In the meantime, she instructed me to gather financial records and keep track of anything connected to the fraudulent activity. By late afternoon, there was a knock on my door. It was Caleb. He stood there awkwardly for a second, holding a small brown paper bag. "Just donuts," he said. "Figured we both haven't eaten anything real." I let him in. We didn't say much at first, just sat at the kitchen table, the scent of old coffee and powdered sugar between us. "She almost took everything from you," he said eventually. I looked out the window, past the rooftops toward the cloudy skyline. "She took enough. The rest I'm taking back." He nodded once, quietly. We didn't hug, didn't say anything sentimental, just a handshake. A silent agreement between 2 people who had been broken by the same hands and survived it. That night after he left, I stood on the balcony of my apartment. The air was cool. Houston's skyline blinked with sleepy lights. I let my thoughts drift, not to her, but to me, who I used to be, who I might still become. "I lost a marriage," I said softly, "but I found myself, and sometimes that's the only victory you get." I didn't hate her. I didn't forgive her either, but I was done chasing closure from someone who never offered honesty. I was done needing permission to heal, and as the sun began to rise, I finally understood something I should have known all along.